Okay, so now we are going to switch back to our layer. I'm going to organize this layer comp and put this at the top. Right, and again, I misspoke earlier. I called these layer styles. These are layer comps, and this is how we use one file to organize it for multiple projects. Each step in the project, each figure in the project would be its own layer comp. I don't actually use layer comps. People on my team do, and it seems to work better in a team environment. For me, I just make individual illustrations for things, and one thing I am sure about is you don't want to have individual layers turned off, because if this layer is turned off in your version and it gets turned on in somebody else's version, that's a problem. And we track all that stuff either by always having all the layers on and only having one illustration per project per file, or using layer comps and naming these for the different files. Okay, and we can get rid of these because we're not using these. All right. Wanted to talk a little bit more about let's see here, a quick way to delete. Let's say we needed to delete these layers up here. I'm going to come down and lock these two layers. This is the art for the vessels and the art for the kitties. I'm going to hit that, and that way they're protected. I'm going to hit V for the arrow tool. I'm going to hold down the command key, which is going to auto select. I'm going to drag a box around what I want deleted, and I'm going to hit delete. And if that didn't do it, let's say I grabbed this and it left that leader line, I didn't capture it. One thing I could do is I could say, come over here to these layers, and of course it's not showing me all of it. So these are all linked, and if we opened up enough of these things, we would find, so these layers are not selected, but they're linked. See the linking? And so if we say select linked layers, that means of the layers currently selected, please also select all the additional layers which are linked to those layers. Right? And this happens sometimes. You'll have items that overlap one another, and you don't want to select them. You want to do it programmatically. You can go through there and delete them. All right, now that that's done, let's say we wanted to add some proteins up here to say we're going to have an inset. It's going to point to the renal pelvis and say, hey, these proteins are important. So we're going to set the stroke to 0, we're going to set the fill to black, and we're going to draw out a circle, a shape. See, it's not quite a circle, and so what you have to do is hold down the Shift key. I think they're actually changing that in the new version of Photoshop. One thing I wanted to mention, why did I choose black here instead of white? Look what happens if I click off this layer, and the next one I draw is white instead, and I hold down Shift and I make it. You won't be able to see what shape it is in your layer palette. See over here, little thumbnail icon, you don't really want that. You want to be able to see it. So, okay, so now I already have some layer styles. This one is the one I use for white. It's got a very subtle drop shadow under it and has a stroke. There are two ways you can do the stroke. You can either do it here, and that would be on the shape, and or you can do it in the layer style. And here I'm just choosing to do it in the layer style. It doesn't really do anything different. All right, and then the other one that I have is that I use for the colored one is right here. And again, I make these, set them up, and then I save them. Again, you can share them with your friends or your people who aren't your friend. No. So let's see here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to draw the proteins that are inside here. All I want is I just want to fill a black shape. Let's say let's say this is the shape of the protein. Got the pen tool, I'm holding down the command key to get the white arrow. And that's the shape that I want. Well, I have a bunch of different layer styles that are all made, ready to go for proteins. Okay, we'll go through and look at these. It has a bevel and emboss. The bevel dot has to be towards the center. It can't be over there towards the edge. This is how it comes in by default. You don't want that. You want it in there towards the center. Just like with our drop shadows, we want our lighting to be from the upper left. That's the convention for illustrators. We can boost up the highlight. Depends. Sometimes I do this, sometimes I don't. We can change the profile of that little dot and I like what it does to the highlight. I don't like what it does to the shadow. The shadow doesn't look quite right. Well, I could turn the shadow down or turn it off. So anyhow, you can change that. Again, changing the size. You'll have to do this based on how big your document is, how many pixels it encompasses. So sometimes you'll open this up and you'll have to get in here and adjust these things, okay? Just trying to show you what you're going to encounter. This has a stroke on it, okay? Again, same thing here. And you can turn these off here if you want. You could have your stroke appear here. And same thing, you have to go through and set all that. There's not really a difference. It's kind of a matter of choice. All right, double clicking on it in the layer palette will automatically bring it up here for you. And then if you option click on the little caret over here, it will close multiple ones together and open all of them at the same time. Let's see here. What else can I tell you? Oh, the satin. So here, if we turn satin off for a second, this is the base color that I've picked. It's this kind of faded yellow color. And then I have a satin that is applied to it. The satin color I have set to multiply. I don't always have it set to multiply. I just kind of, what I can tell you is that you want to make sure you can see the effect at 100%. If you have to turn it to black to do that, so be it. And then once you have it set and you get these distances and size set up properly, then you can go through and fine tune it. But sometimes it's easier to turn it to black at the beginning so you can see where the effect is and to make sure it looks correct. This also has a curve, so you can change the curve. I don't ever mess with that. Let's see here. What else was I going to tell you? Oh, and some of these, they have a global light that is checked by, if you click that, I don't usually want that clicked, so I usually unclick it. And when you do unclick it, sometimes it will reset this to a new value, even though it wasn't a value you chose. It will do that. So anyhow, we turn off satin. This is the color. This is it with satin on, and it just gives it a subsurface scattering kind of look. And this has a little drop shadow. And unlike the drop shadow for our shape here, which is real small, this one needs to be bigger and farther away to make it look like this thing is hovering in space. Again, you don't want these things to overwhelm. The drop shadow shouldn't be that dark. It should be fainter like that. All right, let's see here. Let's say we had two different proteins in here. We get the pen tool. We're going to change the shape of them. And this one is going to be a different kind of protein. Maybe it's smaller. Let's see here. Click return. And this one's going to be this blue color. And the nice thing is that you can take these things, and because it's done programmatically, that highlight will move. And I'm selecting these layers by hitting V to get the arrow tool. Command clicking will select whatever layer I'm on. And then sometimes what I'll do is I will select multiple layers. I will hit Command J to move them. I will rotate them all at once, and because they have layer styles on it, maybe I'll flip them horizontally. I will move them, Command Shift drag them to get them farther down, and then I'm going to lower their opacity a little bit to make them look like they're behind just a little bit. And then I'm going to click on them and move them real quickly so that they look like they're and they just look a little bit. It gives a little bit of depth of field to it. Sometimes I'll go through as far as rasterizing them and blurring them a little bit to make them look. And then what else am I going to do? Now I'm going to go through. I'm going to close all these carets by option clicking on this little caret. And then I'm going to grab all of these, and what I want them to do is I don't want these to overlap. I want them to be trimmed or clipped by the circle beneath it. And two ways to do that. I could Command Option G will group them with the layer underneath them. The other thing I could do is I could Option click on them and do it one at a time. Option clicking right there will make these, or I can select them all and do Command Shift, Command Option G, and now they're all grouped, which isn't what I want because, oh yeah, that doesn't work. Blend interior effects is group. Let me see if we can make this work. No, that's not it. Nope. All right, so then how would we do that? We would have to ungroup them, and I did that by option clicking. I'd put them in a layer. I would command click on this layer. I would hit Command G to group them into their own layer. And then I would, with a selection active, and I got that selection by command clicking on this ellipse shape, I would make a layer mask for that. What didn't it do? What it didn't do was it didn't do the edge down here. Okay, so that's a problem. So let's try and figure out how to fix that, because that's really not what I want. So what if I took off the layer style, leave the drop shadow on? Yeah, let's leave the drop shadow on, and let's go to U and fill it with white. I think that's going to do it. And we got to give it a stroke. And then deselect and come in here and look. Yeah, I think that's going to do it. So now that's a good reason where you would use the features here instead of, and again, you got to set this back, and then you'd adjust it here. So anyhow, that's how that would work. Now, the other thing that I would do is I may want to move, once I make this circle, I'm going to have to move this circle, and I don't want to move this and then go and have to move all these other objects. The right way to do this is to take all of them, shift, and I click the top one, shift click on the bottom one, and click link. So now if I go to move this thing, it just moves with me anywhere I want it to go. Okay? That is it. All right, and so what else have we done here? I think the only thing we haven't done is I wanted to show you, and this shouldn't take too long. So I wanted to show you how to set up. Actually, let's do that in the next tutorial. Let's do that in the next tutorial. We're going to do a scatter brush to show inflammation in the next tutorial. All right, I think that is it for using layer styles on shapes.